Hello, welcome to the tutorial for the Horsham dress. If you don't already have the pattern, there is a link in the description. First up, we're going to do these bust darts. I've marked the end of mine with a pin. I just poke it through the end of the dart on the pattern and then pull it through the paper so that it stays there, so I know it's in exactly the right place. I've marked the other end with notches. I'm going to place those together nicely and put a pin in it. If you're not too confident about stitching darts, you could always draw the lines on with a pencil, or you could tack it in. I'm just going to go for it with the pins. There we go. Quick back tack, and then it's sewing along, tapering off towards the pin, and I always aim to come off the fabric by the time I get to the pin. A nice smooth angle on there so you don't get any pokey bits around your boobs. There we are. Give it a press. Those bits should all line up when you come to do your side seam. Keep those in place so you don't lose it when you come to pin your side seams. Turn it over. There we are. Give it a nice press. Repeat for the other side. Side seams. You need your back panels and your front panels for this. Right sides together. Put them together, pop a pin in it. Make sure you get all those layers pinned together for the bust dart. There we are, match them up so they're all level. Put a pin in and away you go. Centimetre seam allowance on all my patterns unless otherwise stated in the descriptions. Quick back tack and off we go. So I've finished the edge of the fabric with an overlocking. You can use a zigzag or whatever method you prefer to use to finish your raw edges. Repeat for the other side and then we move on to the back seam. Double notch here. This is where your zip will end or start, whichever way you think about it. So my stitching will start at that notch and go towards the hem. Again, another nice straight line of stitching. Super easy. Bit of a back tack and off we go. Centimetre seam allowance. Again, you'll see I've finished the edge with an overlock. Press the seam open. And there's the gap for the zip. Next job, zip. This is a concealed zip that I'm using. I've actually taken this out of another project, so it's a little bit uneven at the top. I like to unfold them and press them before I stitch them into my garment, just to make it a bit easier to get the stitching right close to that nylon spiral. I'm going to pin it right against my seam allowance because it's a 1 centimetre tape, so that's easy. And I also like to stitch my tape to my dress before I stitch really close into the zip. I just find it holds everything in place a bit nicer than the pins. The pins can get in the way a bit. So I will whiz down that outside edge on a straight stitch on my machine, and then I'll come back to do the second row of stitching after that. All pinned. Pop it under the machine. Off we go. Secure that tape right down as far as you can get to the end. Makes for a nice secure zip. There you go, that's the first row of stitching, just on the edge there. And then where I've pressed open this coil, I'm going to go back with my zip foot for my machine so I can get really, really close in to that nylon spiral. Job done. There you go, that's as close as I could get into there. And repeat for the other side. We're going to pin the tape the other side first, as we did before. Line the edge of the tape up with the edge of the fabric. Make sure it's even. As you can see, I've nibbled a bit off the top of my zip there where I took it out of another dress. Pin nice and evenly all the way down. And we're going to pop that first row of stitching in to hold the tape down. Stitching right on the edge there just to secure it down. And then we're going to come back and do that final row. There we are, there's that edge one. Now we want to open the zip up. And we're going to go back into that ditch. So much easier than wrestling with pins, I find. Job done. There we go, nice neat row of stitching. Can do our zip up and it should look very smart. Perfect. One zip done. Next up is the facings. You can see I've interfaced my facings again for a little bit of stability. Creates a nice edge for the armholes and the neckline. That's my back piece going on there. I'm going to pin the side seams and stitch those. 1 centimetre seam allowance as usual. Both sides go on like that. Back tack, stitch, back tack. Both sides. Press it open. Nice and flat. Ready to be pinned to our dress. Lovely. Here we go, here's the neckline. We're going to match these up, pin them, and you want to start pinning 1 centimetre from the shoulder seam. There's different methods of bagging out these facings. I know a favourite is the burrito method, but this one is what I personally choose to do. Match up those side seams under the arms. Pop a pin in. Great. Pin round the armholes. Try and keep those curves together. This is the centre back. Undo the zip a bit. Make sure your centre backs are level. So you've got the same amount of fabric in each piece. Lovely. Line those up. They will become your shoulders in a moment. Now, I've got a pen. I'm going to measure by eye, a centimetre in and a centimetre in. So that should be a centimetre from the shoulder seam and a centimetre from the armhole or neckline, depending which part you're doing. This is where I start and stop my stitching. Again, normally I do it by eye, but I think it's easier to show you with a dot exactly where you need to start and stop. Just folded back my facing there by the zip, so when I turn it over it's nice and neat, ready for a little hand stitch to finish it. Centimetre seam allowance as usual, get to that dot, little back tack, start the next bit, start on the dot, finish on the dot, start on the dot and finish on the dot, last one, start on the dot and finish on the dot. Fabulous. So here we are. We've started and stopped at those dots. Got a nice smooth line there. We're going to clip now into the curves. This will help a nice flat, neat curve on your neck, and also help when we're edge stitching. Trim those little bits down. It's all bulk that we don't need. Get rid of those and clip into that armhole curve. That's the really important one to clip into. Lots and lots. That's it. Now we're going to brush all this seam allowance towards the facing. So we want it to be stitched to the facing through all those layers, right about there, just near the edge. Here we go. Start on the edge, pulling that seam allowance towards the facing as you go, and try and get as far as you can up to the shoulders. It gets a bit tricky in those narrow bits. If you can't get right to the end, it doesn't matter. Just go as far as you can, as neatly as you can. All the way around. Bit fiddly, but it's really worth it because it gives it a lovely edge. There we go. Pull that through. That is our shoulder seam. That's our armhole. You can see again already it's lying nice and flat, even though it hasn't even been pressed yet. Lovely shape to that curve. Nice and smooth. Give it a press. Right, nicely pressed. Beautiful curve. Now for the shoulders. Again, this is a little bit fiddly, but I think it gives quite a nice finish. Front and back shoulder seams. Turn it through, and now this is where the centimetre that you left unstitched is helpful, because that shows us our seam allowance, and we can just stitch across just that one layer, that outer layer that forms the shoulder, leaving our inner layer alone. Pull it out of the way, so then when we come to tuck it all in and fold it all over, it will look nice and neat. There we are, that's the stitch line. And once we've tucked it all in, it actually looks very smart. Like I say, a little bit of a fiddle, but pop a pin in that and then a little hand stitch, and that will look fantastic. Do the same for the other side and give it a nice press. There we are, job done. 2 shoulder seams, neatly stitched. As you can see here, I've tucked in that little bit of seam allowance and given it a pin. I'm going to again just hand stitch that down. You can do it by machine, but it takes 2 minutes to do by hand. So that's again my chosen method. There you go, that's one side. Repeat for the other side and then you're done. Hem. It's got a bit hairy while we've been processing the dress. You can turn and turn like that. I think that's a really nice finish for a denim outfit, so I will do it like that this time. I think that's appropriate for this fabric. You could just zigzag the edge or overlock the edge and turn it. It's up to you. But I'm just going to turn it and turn it so it's nice and neat. There you go. Press it. Nice crisp edge. Lovely row of stitching. Job done. Enjoy.